I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Well, welcome back to Focus Today, and well, we are 1 week away from the election, and what a delight and always an honor to have with us today Liz Peek. She's a columnist for FoxNews.com and FiscalTimes.com. Her latest article yesterday, Can Hillary Clinton buy the 2016 election? Well, we'll see. Liz, good to see you as always. Thank you for your time. What do you think of the mess today?
It's my pleasure. You know, it just goes from rocky point to rocky point, right? I mean, I think what we've seen over the last week is a toll taken on Hillary Clinton's campaign, not just by James Comey's Friday bombshell announcement that he was reopening the email probe, but going back the week before that, there was a real shift in momentum. And I think it had to do with Obamacare and all the bad news about soaring premiums across the country. You know, the oldest story in politics is that when it hits the pocketbook, everyone starts paying attention. And I think everyone really kind of did a wide-eyed look at Obamacare for the first time in a long time last week and realized that they really didn't like what they saw. Also realized maybe that Hillary Clinton really doesn't have a good answer for that. And also, let's face it, we've had this continued WikiLeaks seepage of really kind of awful things that the Clinton campaign has been up to, whether it is saying sort of off the record miserable things about religious Americans, or showing that, various news anchors were in the tank for Hillary. Obviously, the news about Donna Brazile having fed her the questions in the primary. You have to just kind of and tawdry, and yes, they can shift the attention to Russia, but Americans really aren't that stupid. They know that this stuff is pretty awful.
Well, it's been said the last couple of days she brought this on herself, and it's now coming to an incredible head. What do you think of Comey doing what he did? I mean, what's your take on this? Is it legitimate? Is it political? Is he trying to clean up a mess? What do you think?
You know, I think James Comey is a political animal. I'm not saying that he's partisan, but he's a political person in a political world. So there's no way he did this ignorant of what was going to hail down upon him, right? I mean, he knew that this was a very dangerous move. So I think you have to assume that there was an even more dangerous threat if he didn't do it. And so what could that be? What it would be, presumably, is that in the course of, the next several weeks or months, that FBI agents were going to go public with some of the stuff that they had found, either about the email scandal or the Clinton Foundation. It just seems to me that Comey knew that this was the lesser of two risks, and that the other one was going to be perhaps worse for him and also worse for the country. So I think, we don't know what we'll find. I assume what's on Huma and Anthony Weiner's laptop is a lot of those emails that were bleach bitted, or I'm not sure what the verb is, that were basically scrubbed and destroyed by the Clinton team. You don't go to such lengths to destroy, I was about to say evidence, or to destroy emails, unless there's something in there you don't want the public to see. And I think, as we all know, there's been a sort of closing of the circle around the Clinton Foundation. There have been a lot of WikiLeaks things that have come out, tying gifts from donors to actions taken by the Secretary of State. I assume that's where this is headed. But look, for a year, Republicans have said, get into the foundation. It is beyond tawdry. It probably is criminal. Investigate it. And so perhaps that's where they're headed now.
All right. Your article suggests, in spite of all this, she buys the election and moves forward. Two questions come out of this. Do you think that momentum, and does she have the resources to buy the election with all of this coming down on her? And number two, if she is elected, can she govern with this mess going around?
I think they're both really valid points. As far as being able to buy the election, that's sort of hyperbole. It's a good title. But what I'm really talking about is that Hillary is invested in a very robust ground game and raised a huge amount of money. I mean, she's raised over $1 billion. You don't read much about that in the media because the media doesn't want you to think that Hillary Clinton doesn't love, lots of money. She does. And she's been very successful at raising it. And now she's spending it in the ground game. Here's why. Hillary Clinton's unfavorables as of yesterday, a new poll that's out, are higher than Donald Trump's. They're terrible. They're worst of her entire lifetime. 60% of the country views her unfavorably. What that means is a lot of people who were presumed to be voting for her, that is to say the Obama coalition in particular, millennials, Hispanics, and blacks in particular, may or may not show up. All those voting groups have been shown in the past to be a little wobbly. That is to say, particularly young people, maybe they'll vote, maybe they don't, but they are not excited about Hillary Clinton. We saw in a poll yesterday that the millennial enthusiasm for her is down, or support for her is down 6 points in 2 or 3 weeks. That's a pretty dramatic change. And I think, frankly, again, that has to do with Obamacare a little bit. And also what we've seen is in 2 states, South Florida and North Carolina, black turnout is substantially less than it was in 2012. That's exactly what Clinton's been panicked about since the convention. When you have President Obama out on the stump saying, if you don't vote for Hillary Clinton, I'll take it as a personal insult to black audiences, that is a strong message. And I think they've been really concerned about blacks not showing up because black people aren't particularly impressed with Hillary Clinton. They don't like the Clinton authorship of the crime bill that many view as sort of the beginning of so-called mass incarceration. So, she's going to counter that. She has lots of money to do it. Ironically, as I point out in that piece, as of 2 weeks ago, the Clinton camp was so confident that they began to spend money improbably in states where she was way ahead, like in Wisconsin, but where there's a Senate seat up for grabs. In Texas, where she has really no hope, I think, but she was just sort of tweaking Donald Trump. Now those resources are going to be pulled back. They'll be spent, I assume, in North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, states that she really wants to win. And right now, Donald Trump is making inroads.
She lost a lot of her support, or her points had evaporated before the story broke on Friday. I mean, she was really in a decline before that broke. And I guess we'll have to wait today or tomorrow to see what the impact is of all of this. But it's just not there, is it?
Well, I think that, again, the decline in her polling was, I think it's WikiLeaks and I think Obamacare. And I agree. We really haven't seen what the Comey announcement will result in. The Democrats are hoping it'll fire up her base because they'll view it as overreach by the federal government, or by Comey in particular. They're kind of going after him personally. My guess is it really affects turnout, that basically if you weren't a committed Hillary supporter before, and there's still, a pretty big slug of the country that is apparently undecided, I don't think you're you're not going to be turned by this. If anything, you'll be discouraged from voting. And again, I think it just could mean that more of her base fails to show up on Election Day. Now, we know, as you know, a lot of people have already voted. I think there are 10 states where you can change your vote. I don't really hold out any hope that people are going to go and do that. But it is an interesting little sidebar that, if people are really infuriated by what comes out, if anything does over the next week, they could change their votes.
Liz, where do you think the Bernie supporters go now with this mess?
I think Bernie Sanders supporters either vote for the Libertarian candidate, Gary Johnson, or they basically stay home. They could possibly vote for Jill Stein, the environmentalist, but she seems a little loopy even for Bernie Sanders supporters. I don't know. I think those two will siphon off some of the Sanders people. But again, I think, the worst thing for that crowd is this revelation that the DNC colluded with the Hillary camp to undermine Bernie Sanders. I mean, really, that's just really seriously dirty politics. And for idealistic young people, gosh, I think that's got to really hurt. Now, Bernie Sanders, I think, is going to be out campaigning across, I think, like 8 states in the next week. I mean, he is really out there actively. It'll be interesting to see whether his crowd still are as enthusiastic about him now that he has sort of buckled under to the Clinton machine. I don't know. We'll see.
The other question a little bit, Liz, if she wins, and can she govern? I mean, we don't know what would happen from the time of the election and the inauguration. There could be an indictment, then a pardon by the president, or this could go to a full-blown indictment after she becomes president. Now you're dealing with impeachment. How can she possibly govern with this hanging over her head?
I don't know, and I think that's a really incredibly interesting point. I don't know whether it'll impact voters' decisions, but certainly some people out there must be saying, wow, this is a risky vote. This is something that could end up with, miring the government in scandal, just like the last Clinton White House. I mean, isn't it amazing, really? But I think you're right. If her camp kept talking over the weekend about how what Comey did was unprecedented. Here's what's unprecedented: electing a president who is subject to not one, but two federal investigations. That is almost unheard of to me. It is unheard of. It's never happened before. And I think it raises exactly the question you're raising. How do we get through that? Won't it just be an unbelievably demoralizing and confusing time for this country? And honestly, I don't think we can afford it. But voters will have to make up their own minds whether they want to take that risk.
One last question, Liz. It kind of goes to the heart of what you do as well. And no matter who wins, our economy is a house of cards. How tough do you think it's going to be the first 2 quarters after a new president?
It's a really good question. The markets tend to applaud Hillary Clinton's rise in the polls, and they get worried when Donald Trump is doing well. But I think that's simply because Trump represents some uncertainty, and the markets hate uncertainty. Getting politics out of the picture for a moment, the economy is kind of, meandering along. It certainly isn't accelerating. This is probably now the 5th or 6th year where economists have promised that by the 3rd and 4th quarter, we're going to see some acceleration. The 3rd quarter did look better than the 2nd, but I think that's because of inventory accumulation. In other words, the 2nd was probably a little below trend. The 3rd was a little above trend. I see no sign that retailers, for example, are gearing up for a really robust consumer 4th quarter, which of course is the big quarter, nor do I see any sign that businesses are picking up investment spending, which has been the weak link all along. In a perfect world, if we elect Donald Trump, he brings on board some free market, pro-business, pro-small business advisors who kind of get this economy moving again. I think one of the great untold stories of the Obama presidency is how this White House has been so belligerent and oppressive to business interests. Yes, the stock market's done well, and a lot of business guys have done very well in terms of their personal holdings. But business leaders are terrified of the Obama White House. They're terrified of new regulations and rules, to be sure, but they're also very worried about these investigations from the Department of Justice that sort of haphazardly land in their laps about racial issues and things that traditionally would be approached in a very different way. This White House is very intimidating, and I think as we move on, hopefully we'll get back to a little bit more normal give and take between government and the corporate world.
Well, Liz, you're a delight. Thank you for your time. We do value it greatly. And let me say to our viewers and listeners, you can go to Liz Peek and see her columns at foxnews.com and also at fiscaltimes.com. and keep track of her articles there. Thank you, Liz. Look forward to many visits in the future.
All right. Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
You too. All right. We'll be right back.